So, why socialism doesn't work? Coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense Logic Reason. And as always, I'm going to say thank y'all for joining me today. So, socialism is and has always been pushed by the left, and it's always being pushed by the left. And they're always constantly trying to put socialism on us. And it's good for good reason, because socialism sounds great on paper, but in practice, it never works, though. That's the problem with socialism. It's been tried in many countries in the 20th century, and every time socialism has failed. Now, Margaret Thatcher, who's the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, she made a quote about socialism, and she says that the problem with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money, which gives us a key indicator of why, one of the reasons why it never works. Now, there are many reasons why socialism always fails, but there are basically two main base reasons that I can figure out why socialism never works, and that being pricing and human nature. Pricing and human nature will always be an Achilles heel for socialism. It will always be the reason why socialism will always fail. So now let's explain. Let's start with the first one, pricing. Now, prices are a very important part of markets. They're key indicators that tells people who operate in those markets basically what we should produce and how much of it we should produce, and in what variation should we produce those goods. And just as important, it tells us what we should not produce. All of these things can be extrapolated by pricing. So if the price of a good goes up, that usually means that it's rare, and thus when people see the prices go up, that's the indicator to people who produce. Let's produce more of it. Let's produce more of this item and capitalize upon the popularity. So let's supply this good to people who want it, and people will buy it, and we'll make money off of this, which is what capitalism is, and there's nothing wrong with that. The left tries to demonize that, but there's nothing wrong with that. That's what capitalism is, and that's what makes capitalism so great, and why capitalism is so good at supplying needs. But likewise, though, when the price of something goes down, it's a key indicator that we have an abundance of it and nobody wants it. So stop producing it. All right? The people who produce will get that indicator from pricing that nobody wants this good, so I'm going to stop producing it. Which is another good part of capitalism, is that capitalism, we know what we shouldn't produce. Stop producing things that people don't want. Now, the problem with socialism is that socialism doesn't really have markets. And if you don't have markets, you have prices. And the people, the central authorities, planning authorities over socialism and communism, since there are no markets and there are no prices, they do a horrible job of determining what people need and what people want and what people don't want. So what it would end up happening is that you end up having an abundance of things that nobody wants and a lack of things that people want. And again, in markets, when you have millions of people making millions of decisions every day, it's nearly impossible for one central authority to make all those decisions and to be able to make the right decision on what people need and what people want. Inevitably, they end up making guesses, and more often than not, they guess wrong. And the guesses they basically start to mount up, and they start to multiply, which eventually leads to the failure of a system. And then there's human nature. Human nature is always going to be something that always derails socialism. Now, one of the ways that I use to try to explain why human nature always sabotages socialism is the hour pay analogy. And if you live in a capitalist society, when people have employees, you'll understand how we get paid. You know, you basically get paid for the hours that you work if you're an employee. You don't, okay, your pay is not based off of any hours when nobody else work. It's just your work. You work 40 hours a week, you get paid for 40 hours that week. You work for 30 hours that week, you'll get paid for 30 hours that week, right? You work for 45 hours that week. Here in America, we have what's called overtime pay. Anything over 40 hours is overtime pay. So if you work 40 hours, you get paid 40 hours at your base pay, and then 5 hours at time and a half, your base pay. But your wages are based off of what you work and only what you work and nobody else. Now let's say that someone comes along and try to institute a more socialist hourly pay in which everybody gets paid equally based off of all the hours put in that week. All the hours averaged that week, everybody gets paid equally. All the hours basically gets shared equally amongst everybody. So we all get equal and we all equally in this. Well, let's say that a person or the hours that week, right? When the first week they institute this system, the hours that week that everybody get averaged out and paid are, let's say, 42 hours. Everybody get paid 42 hours, 40 hours, and 2 hours of overtime. Now, anybody who works, 42 hours, they're like, okay, well, I work 42 hours and I get paid for 42 hours. Right? Nothing changed for me. But the people who work less than that, they're happy. The people who work 40 hours a week and who don't like to work overtime, who choose not to, they're happy now because they worked their 40 hours or less, and they got paid for 42 hours. Right? Well, the people who work more than that, they're not happy. If you're a person and you work 50 hours that week and you only got paid for 42 hours, you're not happy at all. That's 8 less hours that you get paid for. So that's almost a day's wage you didn't get because of this hourly pay. So you think those people are going to be happy? So what do you think is going to happen the following week? Do you honestly believe that those people who work those extra hours that drag the hours up, you think they're going to continue to do that? Well, no, they aren't, because human nature is going to say, well, I'm not going to work all these hours and not get paid for it. So what's going to happen is those people, they're going to basically choose not to work the overtime. And then the people who work less hours, they're going to get, human nature is going to set in with them, and then they're going to say, well, wait a minute, I can work even less hours now. I can take off now and I'll still get paid. So what happens? Well, the hours the following week, the hours is just going to be dragged down because everybody's going to work less hours because of human nature is going to set in. And now the hourly pay is going to decrease even more. And every week, the people who work more than that, those hours are going to be upset, and they're just going to work less hours. And what's eventually going to happen is people are going to work less and less and less. And eventually what happens is that old Soviet trope, that Soviet Union trope kicks in. We pretend to work and they pretend to pay us. Nobody shows up to work because they're not going to get paid what they work. Nothing ever gets done. Nothing is produced, and we have a lack thereof in this particular job. Now imagine this through a whole tri-sector, a whole country, a whole city. And then you can start to see the problems and how human nature becomes the problem, because again, people aren't stupid and they're not going to do something if they're not being paid for it. If I show up and I work 40 hours a week still, and the hours average out to 4 hours for everybody, you think I'm going to show up and keep working and only put all that work in and only get paid for 4 hours? I won't do that. Nobody's not going to do that. Nobody's stupid. Again, so this is the problem. This is why socialism just never works. It never works, no matter how much the leftists try to push it to us. It just simply doesn't work. And it never works. And I can understand why young people, these college kids, these kids coming out of college would support socialism because, as Churchill, Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II, said that if you're not socialist when you're young, you don't have a heart. But if you continue to be a socialist as you get older, you don't have a brain because, as I said, socialism sounds good on paper. And for kids, college kids who have no experience in anything, it sounds great. But as you get older and you start to learn how it doesn't work, then you should be changing your mentality about it. And if you continue to support it, you really truly don't have a brain. Anyway, so I don't care how often the left pushes socialism, we should reject it because it just simply doesn't work. That's why I say, capitalism isn't perfect, but it's the best system we got. It's the best thing we have until the return of Christ. And I will always be an advocate for capitalism because, as evidence shows, it works. Again, China had to resort to capitalism to be the emerging economic system it is today. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on this. This is why socialism doesn't work. And as always, y'all, until next time.